Hey guys, I have a question. Have you ever shared the gospel with someone who wasn't a believer?
I mean, yeah, because I feel like it's our responsibility and our duty as Christians. Like once you start um, living that lifestyle of like following God or what, and then comparing it to your past lifestyle of like when you didn't have Christ, and when you start comparing it to Him, you start realizing everything that He's done for you and how He had all the answers and He was all the answers to what you were going through. You want other people to know about that because like you obviously see we're in college and we see everybody like going through different things or like different stages in their life, and they might have problems or they might even have the same problems that you were going through. And it's just like I went through that and I got over it with His help. You can do the same thing, and that's when you start sharing.
I never had the opportunity to share the gospel with someone because I never had like the experience of like church and just like the Catholic or Christian religion or any type of religion. So I never basically had that experience in life. So I never had the opportunity to share that with someone. But like going to Bible study now and like going to church now, I feel like I'm getting that more the opportunity to say like, let's go to Bible study together, let's go to church together, because I'm feeling that's sharing the gospel,
I would say yes, because now that I'm getting like more into it and stuff and going to church again, which I used to, took a break for a long time, but getting back into it, like my parents aren't really religious at all, so I tried to kind of talk to them about it, but they don't understand it and they don't care to understand it, which kind of stinks, but that's my experience, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not that I've preached or like went and imposed my views on somebody else, but like more as I've lived in such a way that people experience Christ through me, and I feel like that's what we're supposed to do. We're just called to live in such a way that people experience God and the love that we have for God through what we do each day. So
I know for me, like, it's not that I go out to go like how you said, I don't go looking out to preach to people, but like say something might happen in a day, like that somebody might be like, why did you do that? Like, why do I see you talking to yourself? I'm like, oh no, I'm not really talking to myself, I'm just praying out loud.
yeah, I think once you live in such a way that people experience Christ through you, more people are drawn to you to ask questions and feel open and compelled to ask questions about your faith, and in that way then you're sharing the gospel as well.
I feel like I've gone through the hardships that I've gone through in my life, like you said, like we found the answer. We have the answer. And I feel like, at least for me, it's like selfish in a way not to share that answer. You know what I'm saying?
Like it's like if you have something that could save somebody's life, it would be selfish of you to keep it just to yourself and not want to share it with everybody. Like if you got free movie tickets, you're gonna want to share the movie tickets with everybody, not just be like, oh, I just have the movie tickets to myself. No, you're gonna share with everybody so we can all enjoy this great movie that we're about to go see.
Something that we did for like RA training was we did like our witness talks and stuff. You don't know this because you're not an RA, but I mean, I don't know if you even realized that like you were doing this, Nate, but like something that you did was like you kind of spoke to me in a way, and I've always wanted to get back into like going to church and being more religious and doing all these things, and I feel like you just like sharing like your experiences, and like you mentioned that you fell out of faith for a little while and then picked it up, got right back into it, and like that made me believe that like I can also do the same thing, which like made me want to like ask you questions about things, and it was very nice. So I feel like that's like a good example of what we're talking about. Like I didn't know that like I needed that in that moment, but if you could share that with like other people, that's great.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's all glory to God, though. Like, I wasn't even gonna talk about my experience. I was gonna talk about my dad and how he was like my motivation for everything, and like, but then I don't know, me and Lavelle, right? We don't know Lavelle, but no, we decided to talk about God because like at the end of the day, it's all about Him. Like, yeah, my dad could have done 1,000,001 things, but really the only reason I'm in the position that I am right now is because of God. So like, what am I doing if I'm not sharing about him?
And it's like the life experiences that we go through, and we see the way God literally takes us from feeling like this to literally like seeing his glory and his works. Just that will be able to like inspire and just encourage other people to want to change too. Because everybody's looking for the truth, whether that be looking in different earthly material things or just other things, they're looking for the truth. But Jesus said, he is the way, the truth, and the life. And I mean, he wants us to all go through life with him. Because at the end of the day, it's like, it's not getting to the destination, but it's the journey. Because that journey of being with Jesus is going to change your life forever. God's love for us is greater than anything we could ever imagine. It's radical and active, fueling his pursuit of a personal relationship with every individual.
It was because of his love that he sent Jesus to retake the life that sin stole from us.
And it's because of his love that he sends us out, with the help of the Holy Spirit, to partner with him in his rescue mission for the world. This is the great commission Jesus gave us.
But that begs the question, why doesn't every believer embody this mission?
Well, for many Catholics, faith is something private and personal. They just don't see a reason to risk their relationships and reputation trying to convert people.
Besides, they see sharing the faith as a job for the quote-unquote professionals, the priests and missionaries who they suppose are specifically called by God for that sort of thing.
But here's the truth we all need to grasp. Every believer has a role in God's mission to bring the good news of Jesus to the world.
Last week, we explored the Pray, Care, Share method as a tool for how each of us can begin to play our part in the Great Commission.
But a tool is no good if we're not motivated to use it. And today, that's what we're talking about, motivation.
What is it that's going to motivate us to go all in for the gospel?
It's the same thing that motivated God to send Jesus, the same thing that motivated Jesus to go to the cross, God's compassionate heart for the lost. As you grow in your relationship with Jesus, you will grow in your experience of God's love. Your heart will become like God's heart, and his heart is for the lost.
We see that happen to the first disciples in the gospel accounts, and we've seen it happen to the saints throughout history.
As Paul put it, Christ's love compelled them to share the good news because they knew God's redeeming love is for everyone. It wasn't the kind of thing they could keep to themselves.
It's our experience of God's life-transforming love for us that will motivate us to love others enough to pray for them, care for them, and share the gospel with them.
We asked students whether they've ever shared the gospel with someone. Here's how they responded.
So, have you ever tried to share the gospel with someone who wasn't a believer? Why or why not?
I have, because obviously, like, I've been through some things in my life, and obviously we're in a college campus, so I'm seeing everybody else going through what I went through in my life. And when I went through that and got over it, obviously with Christ, that was my answer. He was my answer. So then when I see people going through the same thing, I'm like, I have the answer. Why not share it? Like, it would be selfish of me not to. And then, like, I don't want to see them, like, on that same struggle. Like, when they could easily just, like, go to Christ and, like, that him be their answer. So it's like, let's just share it.
So, are you able to give me, like, an example of that?
Yeah, so I'm an RA, and we do a thing called, like, throughout training, we do a thing called witness talks. And it's basically you have to talk about who motivates you. And at first, I was going to talk about, like, my father and how he motivated me throughout life, but I ended up talking about God, because that's ultimately, like, who motivates me and pushes me to, like, keep going forward. And so I talked about a little bit about how when I went through college or whatever, I kind of, like, fell off my faith. And then I, like, my whole lifestyle decreased, like, my football play, like, decreased, my academics decreased. Just like my whole lifestyle decreased a little bit. And like when I finally like returned to Christ, well, at first I thought like I wasn't worthy enough to like return to Christ. Not that I didn't think I was like it was too late, because I know like nothing's late for God, but I just didn't think I was worthy enough to return. But then like when it hit me, like I am worthy enough in his eyes, and like at the same time nobody is really worthy of his love. So that kind of like not motivated me or pushed me, but like it made me take that first step of like, I can return. And when I did, that was probably like the best decision I've ever made. And then my lifestyle like increased, got back to where it used to be. And then like when I reflected on that and that decision that I took, I was like, maybe I should share that, because I see people and their lifestyles are like decreasing, or like they've been on their lows for a good while now. And it's just like, maybe if I share that, what I went through, and like my answer of God, maybe it could increase their lifestyle as well.
Yeah, I have before. I do it mostly a lot with my family. My mom and my brother are really like into it. We all recently just started going to a new church together actually I guess not recently, it was more of like last year. And we continued with it over the summer. I can't really talk about it like with my dad. He's not a believer. He believes that like passing any like spiritual or religious like institution is enough for him for like a week, which is kind of bothers me. But kind of just like trying to talk to him about it is like talking to honestly like a brick wall. But I do talk a lot about it with my friends here at school. I know some of them don't believe, but a lot of the times they'll be open-minded to it and just, listen to what I have to say, whether it's something they're going to take with them or not. And sometimes they'll give me their input on it, and we'll just have like a conversation. But
have you ever tried to share the gospel with someone who wasn't a believer? Why or why not?
Actually, I haven't shared the gospel with anyone that is a believer, because I used to not be a believer in the gospel. Further during when I was younger, I kind of just would go into church. I didn't feel like I was connected there, so I kind of faded away from my faith. And then now, being older and being in college, I feel like I'm becoming more connected with God. I'm going reading the Bible, the scripture, going to Bible study, just having everyone's connection, how they have the same, basically past as me, have not their faith has grown apart and now they're coming back into faith. I feel like it's kind of one of those insights of just maybe I can come back and get back into it, and that I don't have to feel like I'm the only one, because I'm not the only one.
Have you ever tried to share the gospel with someone who wasn't a believer?
For me, I not necessarily have shared the gospel, but I try to live in such a way that you can experience Christ through me. When I was growing up, faith was pushed upon me, and religion was very much pushed upon me. My aunt's a sister of Notre Dame, and so she was my rock and my drive to experience God and really dive into my faith. But my parents were never into faith or into religion, so it wasn't really in the household. So when I would come home from school, and I went to Catholic school, so when I came home from school or when I came home from Life Teen or church, I would always try to talk to my dad and talk to my mom about it, but they never really understood. And then as I got older and I just kept living in such a way that I knew that they would experience Christ through me, my dad started coming to me more and asking me questions and well, why do you do this? Or how do you do this? And I think that by just living in such a way, it was a call for him to actually ask questions and be open about it.
Like I said, it's our experiences of God's love that will motivate us to love others enough to share the good news of Jesus with them. Without that love, our efforts at evangelization at best are awkward and forced, and at worst, they can become coercive and destructive. So, what is God's heart for the lost like? Well, hopefully, the past few weeks of this study have already cast a pretty clear vision of God's radical love for the world. But let's keep exploring this vision. Jesus said, "If you have seen me, you have seen the Father." In other words, if we want to know what God's heart is like, we need to look to Jesus. To do that, we're going to turn to a scene recorded in the 6th chapter of Mark's Gospel.
When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out, because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed. They had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout that whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed.
Did you notice Jesus' first response to seeing the crowds that had gathered? The text says he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. The Greek verb there for had compassion means something like he was moved in his gut. At the sight of these harassed and helpless people, Jesus had an emotional gut-level response to reach out to them in love. And his reaching out took 2 forms. First, the text says he began to teach them many things. Jesus met their deepest spiritual needs by teaching them the truth about his Father and the life that can be found in him. But Jesus didn't stop there. He also met their material needs. When he saw their hunger, he responded by performing one of the most famous miracles in order to feed them. And if you'll notice, he didn't do it on his own. Jesus called his followers to activate their faith and join him in his work. They weren't the source of God's provision, but through audacious obedience, they became the delivery mechanism Jesus used to do something extraordinary. In that field, Jesus showed us not only God's heart for the lost, but also the role he expects us disciples to play in reaching out to them. All right, we've been talking long enough. Now it's your turn. Pause the video for a few minutes to have some discussions with your group. Here are a few questions to consider. Number 1, have you ever tried sharing your faith with others? What did you learn from those experiences? Number 2, what steps can we take to lean into God's work of transforming our hearts to be like his?